The following video contains spoilers just up to where the anime has been published, Season 4 Part 2. Today we are going to talk about the Wall Titans, the Titans that have been hidden or were hidden inside the walls all the time. The same Titans that we don't really have that much information on. To talk about the Wall Titans, we must first have a look at their history. It's been said in the anime and in the manga, of course, that the Wall Titans were made in the year 743 by King Fritz, and there are tens of millions of them. That's a huge number that we're going to talk about later on. So King Fritz makes the walls out of the Wall Titans, out of these people. I said people and there is a reason, we're going to talk about that later on, that's the main point. And after completing the walls, King Fritz threatens the world, the whole world, with total annihilation if they choose to come after them and destroy their so-called paradise or paradise. But there is actually a little important fact that we might have been ignoring all the time. Something that has been staring us in the eyes since the very beginning, that we actually understood the true nature of the walls. Before moving to the main point, I'm just gonna remind you that based on estimations and based on data from the anime itself and from Attack on Titan, Attack Titan, Shingeki no Kyojin itself, there aren't that many Wall Titans in the walls. There must be around 200,000 or 300,000 maximum, not tens of millions. Just bear that in mind, we are gonna need that later on. Did you ever think for a second, where did the Wall Titans come from? We actually need 200,000 people, persons, humans to turn them into the Wall Titans. So let's cut to the chase, shall we? King Fritz made 200,000 of his people into Wall Titans, kept them in the dark, kept them in the walls for hundreds of years or at least 100 years, and he was planning to keep them there for a longer time. They wouldn't be out if it wasn't for Eren and his rumbling. He basically condemned them to a life of constant suffering. Now hold your horses before you start attacking me in the comment section. I know it sounds a bit of a stretch, but I do remind you in the last video that is actually subtitled, and I'm sorry for that. I did kind of prove it to you that the Titans, the pure Titans at least, they do regain some of them, they do have some of their consciousness. It's very clear in the anime, and I'm sure Hajime Isayama wanted that to be conveyed to us. Just for the sake of it, I'm gonna put that video in the middle of this video and just read the subtitles, and I'm sorry again for that.
شاید بگید که کلا هیچ حس نمی‌کنن که این از پایه غلطه. قراره دو تا مثال براتون بیارم. ببینیم مثال اولی که ما داریم خود یمیر هست. اون یمیری که دیدیم، نه اون یمیر قد بلنده که یوریش با کریستا یا اون هیستوریا قرار بود داشته باشه. اگه یادتون باشه یمیر تعریف میکنه، میگه من سالیان دراز تو حالت تایتانی بودم و میگه که من میدونستم چه اتفاقاتی داره میفته و اینکه یک کابوس بود تمام این وضعیت برای من و من ناراحت بودم، اذیت میشدم و در جریان اتفاقات بودم و میگفت از خوردن مارسل هم پان اینتندد خیلی ناراحت بودم. ببینید این یک مسئله بسیار مهم اینجاست، یعنی ثابت میکنه این صحبتی هست مستقیما از خود یک از کاراکترهای اثر، نوشته خود آقای ایسایاما که دقیقاً برگشته میگه که آقا ما حس میکنم، من یادم بود، من متوجه میشدم. از اون ور شما آرمی رو دارید که بعد از اینکه میفهمه که یاد خاطرات خوردن ورتوتش میفته بالا میاره، یعنی بالاخره خاطرات وجود داره براش، صرفا اینکه من این رو خوردم نیستش. یک بحث اینجا مطرح میشه، تایتان ها متوجه دارن چیکار میکنن. یک مثال خیلی خوب هم هستش، من گفتم مثال نمیذارم بیارم، ایلسز نوتبوک بودش که اون تایتانی که اومد اون دختر رو دید و با یمیر اشتباه گرفتش، ببینید جلو خودش گرفته بود، نمیخواستش. یکی از اسپیناف هستش، حتما ببینید اگه 1% ندید، اشاره کردم بهش. خیلی سعی کرد که جلو خودش رو بگیره و میتونست حرف بزنه تا یه حدی، جلو خودش رو بگیره و نخوره اون بنده خدا رو، نخوره اون دختره رو که اسمش هم ایلسه بود طبیعتا دیگه اگه درست تلفظ بکنم. و وقتی که دید که داره به سمت این میره که بخورتش، ناکنید داشت صورت خودش و پوستش رو میکند، یعنی داشت زجر میکشید. یعنی چی؟ یعنی اینکه این تایتانی که اونجا بودش دیگه نمیتونست به خودش مسلط باشه. اون زجری که میکشه، اون اذیتی که میشد باعث شد که حتما سعی بکنه بره که کسی رو که علنا داشتش میگفتش یمیر، کسی رو که بهش احترام داشت رو بخورتش.
So we pretty much can assume that the Wall Titans are aware of what's happening and they must be suffering inside the walls. And do mind that the Wall Titans were inside the walls for at least 100 years before Eren frees them from there. Do take note that I say free. Eren did free them, and I'm gonna talk about that later on. Please do note that the Wall Titans were there for at least 100 years and they couldn't even move. They were confined to a dark place that they could not move but could feel what's happening, and they actually could have all their senses working. I think it's time to finally move to the fact and ask ourselves the hard question and talk about the elephant in the room. So isn't this pretty much one of the biggest, if not the biggest, crime in Attack on Titan, Shingeki no Kyojin? I'm pretty confident that King Freeze didn't go and ask his populace, the people under his rule, that if they wanted to turn into Wall Titans and suffer for 100 years before no, if they could be freed or anything. I'm pretty sure no one would agree to that. And I do remind you that Eldia had a not very pleasant history. It's not like they were loyal people to the king and the royal family. And yes, that's correct, he might have used the power of the founding titan, but that doesn't change the fact that he forced them into that. And oh boy, things do get a little more, let's say, darker. Let's remember what's happening. Let's remember the Wall Titans marching, and let's remember that none of them showed any interest in the humans. None of them showed any interest in devouring humans, Titan shifters, in the hope of finding Titan shifters to turn back into a normal person, normal human. I think there is a reason for that. Imagine you've been in a dark place, confined, you haven't been able to move for a long time, for 100 years or more. And you might have been in a mental state, considering what the pure Titans were suffering from, that you might have been suffering. So what would be left of your humanity? What would be left of your conscience after such a long time in the dark, being unable to move? And there is actually a real world example of that happening that many of you might have experienced, myself included, for a long time and for the longest time, even until recently. I am talking about sleep paralysis. Sleep paralysis is a not very pleasant experience that I myself have been going through for a long time, many years ago, and even now again, and that's one of the main reasons I don't really like sleeping many times when I am stressed enough. So I want to explain what sleep paralysis feels like. Many of you probably have experienced it. A lot of people experience that. So imagine you are lying in the bed and you're going to sleep. You don't really remember when you are sleeping, so you suddenly feel like you are not awake anymore, but also maybe not really asleep, and you can't exactly see or hear completely, but you are kind of aware of what's happening at your surroundings. You can't move. You might feel some people or some monster. I say monster because I don't really know how to explain. A certain presence that shouldn't be there must be better. You feel such a presence close to you. You can't move, and you feel terrified because you can't move and you can't fully use your senses. You can't scream, you can't talk, and it's a very scary experience. So that's what you are feeling for a long time, for a long time, for 100 years non-stop. And I do ask you, what's gonna remain of you after such a long time in such a state? I do imagine that being a titan is much more painful and terrifying than just being in a state of sleep paralysis. But do mind that a perpetual state of sleep paralysis, if you ask me, can drive a person to madness. Let's add upon that you are a titan inside the walls, and you are close to people. You can feel the presence of people that if you are lucky enough to eat them, you might revert back to your human self, you might live again, you might not be suffering anymore, and it's just there and you can't move. It's a pretty terrifying experience and a pretty bad torture. Not bad in the sense of being a bad kind of torture, but actually being a merciless and terrifying torture. And actually there is something more, there is something much worse considering the experience, if we are gonna choose a sleep paralysis as a comparison. Look, I'm gonna give a concrete example. You close your eyes at 10:15 p.m. Let's say you are we say horus, as in a cock, not that cock, but a rooster that sleeps soon and wakes up sooner. So you sleep at 10:15 p.m. You enter the realm of sleep paralysis, you get terrified, you wake up, and how much time do you think it has passed? Probably 5 minutes or 10. How much does it feel that you were there? Several hours. I can assure you that every single time that I go in a state of sleep paralysis, it feels like it's been several hours, but when I wake up, it's been no more than 10 minutes, and that makes me terrified of what the human mind can do to you and your perception of time. Now then, let's move back to Attack on Titan, Shingeki no Kyojin. So, isn't that a bit scary? Isn't that a bit too cruel? Imagine, it's not even 100 years, it's much more than that. It's probably much worse and much more than that. And I don't want to imagine what the people there might have gone through, but I do feel they are being left out and not being talked about enough. It kind of makes sense now. Why do they not even care about eating humans anymore, and they are just walking on the command of anyone that it can be that has the founding titan? It makes sense, perfect sense, if you ask me, considering this theory, that I'm pretty sure it's not that wrong considering all the signs that Hajime Isayama have left us in the manga and in the anime. Not to mention that it must take a huge amount of effort and a huge amount of suffering to break the will of titans, that we have seen pure titans struggling and doing everything they can to eat a titan shifter, to being Val titans that even to move they need command and they won't move even if they are getting sunlight, as we saw when they were firstly revealed. That's a huge tragedy that every single person that has experienced this anime, manga, has overlooked and just ignored altogether, even though it's been staring us in the face from the very beginning. Do leave your comments below and do let me know what you think of this theory. I do think that considering what happened and considering the facts that we can find in the Attack on Titan, Shingeki no Kyojin itself, I think now we could comprehend a bit more these lifeless killing machines that destroy cities, destroy continents and crush everything at their feet. But if you consider their past and how they became what they are right now, you might feel a little bit more empathy towards these monsters, even though it doesn't really serve any purpose except, let's say, sentimentalism maybe. Thank you very much for your attention. Do drop by again if you liked the video and do share if you liked the video. Shab Bekhair.